I never thought I'd be left out in the cold by my own daughter. That's not just a metaphor, I mean really out in the cold, shivering in the dark on the curb with 2 suitcases and nowhere to go. And what hurt more than the wind against my skin was the door. She didn't open the words, she didn't say. But what they didn't know, Amanda and that man she married, was that life had one last card for me to play. And when I played it, it wasn't loud, it wasn't vengeful, but it changed everything. So if you're listening right now, settle in. Because this isn't just a story, this is a reckoning. And my name is Margaret. I'm 58 years old. And until not long ago, I believed in something called unconditional love, especially when it came to family. I believed in it the way children believe in fairy tales. You grow up thinking that no matter what happens, your family is your safe place, your forever, your shelter from the world. And maybe that's true for some people. But for me, well, let me take you back to the day I realized that was a lie. I had built my life around 2 people, my husband and our daughter Amanda. Every dollar I saved, every meal I cooked, every plan I ever made, it all circled around them like stars around a sun. When my husband passed from cancer last year, it was like the floor just dropped out from under me. You know how people say grief feels like drowning? For me, it was more like floating in space, no gravity, no direction, just silence. A silence that screamed. But I told myself at least I still had Amanda, my girl, my heartbeat outside my body. That belief, it held me up even when everything else fell apart. We had built a home, my husband and I, brick by brick in a small corner of Cedar Park just outside Austin. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. And every wall, every cabinet held a memory. His voice echoing from the kitchen, the way he used to hum while he made coffee, the sound of Amanda's laughter bouncing off the hardwood floors when she was little. Too many memories, too many ghosts. So I sold the house. I thought, if I could just be near Amanda, things would start to make sense again. She and her husband Chad offered me a place to stay, or at least Amanda did. Chad barely looked up from his phone when I wheeled my suitcase in. From the start, I tried not to be a burden. I stayed in my little room at the back of the house. I cooked dinner, cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry that wasn't mine. I offered to run errands, pick up groceries, even watch their dog. I was trying to be helpful, invisible even. But Chad, he had a way of making me feel like I was in the way, like I was a pebble in his shoe he couldn't quite shake out. It was little things at first. The sighs, the eye rolls, changing the TV when I was mid-episode, not responding when I asked simple questions. Then one afternoon, as he brushed past me in the hallway, I heard it muttered just low enough for doubt to exist, but just loud enough to pierce. Freeloader. I froze. I told myself I misheard, that it was the wind, the dog barking, anything else. But in my gut, I knew. I turned to Amanda, desperate for her to say something. Anything. But she just gave me that tired smile and said, "He's been stressed. Work's been rough." So I swallowed it. Because that's what mothers do, right? We bite down on the pain. We smile through the disrespect. We convince ourselves that maybe tomorrow will be different. That if we just stay quiet, things will go back to how they were. But then came that night. The night I stopped pretending. I had made dinner. Chicken pot pie, his favorite, ironically. Amanda was on her phone, thumbs dancing, barely aware of the world around her. Chad was drinking his usual beer, staring off at the TV. The silence at that table wasn't just quiet, it was dense. You could feel it pressing against your ribs. And then Chad looked up, dead in the eye, no warning, no mercy. Maybe it's time we stop pretending this is temporary. Amanda stopped scrolling. I blinked. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. He smirked. "I mean, how long is this supposed to go on? You're not working. You're not contributing. We've got bills. We didn't sign up for extra mouths to feed." That moment, those words, it was like someone had poured ice water into my chest. I turned to Amanda, my daughter, my only child. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Maybe it's best," she mumbled, "if you find something more stable. For everyone's sake. For everyone's sake." As if I was some unstable gust of wind that kept blowing through their lives uninvited. I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I didn't beg. I stood up, Walked to my room and started packing. 2 suitcases. That's all it took to compress nearly 6 decades of living, loving, and sacrificing. They didn't offer to help. Amanda stayed seated. Chad didn't even pretend to notice. When I stepped outside, the wind cut through my coat like I wasn't even wearing one. My phone was dead. My pride was dead too. And that's when I knew. This is what it feels like to be erased. I found a motel. The kind with flickering signs and carpet that smells like mildew. The kind where the vending machine eats your change and no one looks you in the eye at check-in. That night, I laid on the thin mattress staring at the ceiling, thinking, how did I get here? What did I do that was so wrong that my own daughter let me be thrown out like yesterday's trash? The next morning, I texted Amanda, I understand, I love you always. No reply. A week later, I sent another message. And another. Birthday wishes. Little updates. Silence. 3 months passed. Every day felt longer than the last. I applied for jobs, anything. But no one wants to hire a grieving widow in her late 50s with no recent work history. I tried cleaning houses, babysitting, but my back wasn't what it used to be. My knees ached when I bent down. And worse than the pain was the shame. Because I had given everything I had to that girl. And she threw me out like I was a burden, like I didn't matter. Then one night, while going through the only box I brought that wasn't filled with clothes, I found it. A small, leather-bound book. My mother's diary. I hadn't read it in years, maybe never, but something about the feel of it in my hands, it called to me, like it was waiting for me. And what I found in those pages changed everything. I didn't expect much when I opened my mother's diary. I thought I'd find the usual things, grocery lists, the weather complaints about Aunt Shirley, the kind of harmless nostalgia that gives you a bittersweet smile before bed. But that's not what I found. Instead, I found a key to the past, to my identity, to a truth that had been hidden in silence longer than I'd been alive. It started small. Little notes about church, the garden, the cost of milk. Then somewhere around June, the tone shifted. I still remember the words exactly. He came again today. Said he wished things were different, that he wished I could be his wife. But he has a family, a business, a name to protect. Margaret will never know. She must never know. I read that line 5 times. Margaret will never know. But I did now. My hands were shaking, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I turned the pages faster. There were meetings in hotel rooms, envelopes of cash he insisted she take, apologies she never asked for, regrets scribbled between lines, like a woman too scared to say them out loud. She never used his full name, only initials HJS. But then came the entry that cracked it wide open. February. He says he's made arrangements, that if anything ever happens to him, he'll make sure Margaret has something, a piece of what he built. It won't be official, it's too dangerous, but he promised me a trust, a letter. He said his lawyer, Mr. Goldstein, would know. Goldstein, that name struck something in me like lightning. I had seen it before somewhere, maybe on a legal envelope tucked into the back of my husband's files, maybe in the news. But it wasn't unfamiliar. I closed the diary and sat in silence, the motel room humming faintly with the buzz of an old refrigerator. Could it be real? Could my mother have protected me in a way I never knew? Could there be something, anything waiting for me, besides humiliation and heartbreak? I didn't call, I couldn't. My hands were trembling too badly to hold the phone. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter, a real letter. Ink on paper, folded carefully, sealed with tape, addressed to Leonard Goldstein. 2 weeks later, I got a call. Is this Margaret? Yes, Margaret Louise. Yes, who is this? There was a pause, then a crack in the man's voice. I always wondered if you'd reach out someday. I knew your mother. She was a remarkable woman. There's something you need to see. The next morning, I packed my things and took a Greyhound bus to Dallas. My suitcase was half full just in case it was all some cruel joke or a memory too tangled to trust. When I stepped into Mr. Goldstein's office, I was met by a wall of old books, older furniture, and a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't some scam. This was real. He slid an envelope across the desk. yellowed, fragile, addressed in perfect cursive, to my daughter, Margaret Louise. I opened it with shaking hands, and I cried before I finished the second paragraph. He admitted everything: the affair, the regret, the love that he wasn't brave enough to name while he was alive. And then came the promise. In the event of my death, I have ensured a portion of my personal assets untraceable through my estate are to be delivered to you via Mr. Goldstein. You are my blood, and though I was too much a coward to claim you in life, I claim you now in death. Mr. Goldstein placed another folder in front of me. I opened it slowly. Bank account statements, an investment portfolio, property titles, transfer authorizations. The total value a little over $1 million. I didn't say anything for a long time. My mouth was dry, my eyes blurred with tears. "Is this real?" I asked. He nodded. "It's always been yours." But it wasn't the money that shook me, not the stocks, not the titles. It was the feeling. For the first time in my life, I felt chosen, seen, validated. I had spent months believing I was disposable, a freeloader, a mistake, and now suddenly I wasn't a burden, I was an heir. I didn't laugh, I didn't scream. I just sat there in that chair letting the truth wash over me like a quiet, overdue rain. That night I didn't sleep. But this time I wasn't staring at the ceiling wondering what I had done wrong. I was planning. I didn't go back to Austin right away. Something had shifted inside me. I wasn't just Margaret the mother, Margaret the widow, Margaret the invisible houseguest. I was someone new, someone who had been lied to her entire life and finally saw the full picture. Someone who understood what it meant to have power, not in the form of revenge, but in the form of freedom. I walked Dallas streets like a ghost, relearning how to breathe. I sipped coffee on benches, watched strangers laugh, watched others cry, and I didn't envy them anymore. I studied them, wondered who among them had been betrayed, who had clawed their way back from being invisible. Mr. Goldstein didn't just give me access to wealth. He gave me time to process, time to become, time to understand that I didn't just survive something, I was becoming someone who would never be erased again. When I returned to Austin, I didn't go back to the motel. I booked a short-term rental off South Congress, clean, modern, quiet. The kind of place Amanda and Chad would never imagine me affording. I started dressing differently, sharper, not flashy, just intentional. Clothes that made me look like someone who belonged, who was no longer begging for space. I watched YouTube videos on investing. I took notes on real estate law. I studied contracts like my life depended on it. Because in a way it did. And that's when I found it. Buried on a property auction site under expired listings and unpaid taxes. An apartment building, East Austin. Run down but solid. Auction scheduled in 2 weeks. And the address. Amanda and Chad's complex. I stared at the screen for a long time, heart pounding. Then I picked up the phone. "Mr. Goldstein, I think I know what I want to do next." I wasn't planning revenge. At least not in the way people think of revenge. No rage, no loud declarations, no "look what you did to me" theatrics. No, I wanted something far more dangerous. Control. Not over their lives, but over mine. 2 weeks. That's how long I had before the property auction. It wasn't just any building. It was the building Amanda and Chad's building. The one they kicked me out of with 2 suitcases and a hollow excuse. The one where Chad made me feel like a stray dog at his dinner table. The one where Amanda sat mute as he stripped me of every last thread of dignity. I wanted to own that silence. I wanted to walk through the halls they claimed as theirs and know it was mine. I called Mr. Goldstein. "I want to place a bid anonymously." He didn't ask why, didn't raise an eyebrow. He simply said, "I'll help you set up an LLC." And just like that, ML Holdings was born. Margaret Louise. My name hidden in plain sight. I filed the paperwork, transferred the funds, read every line of the auction terms twice then again. And then quietly, without anyone knowing, I placed the bid. The auction came and went. And just like that, I owned the building. I remember sitting at my desk in the South Congress rental, holding the deed in my hands. It felt almost weightless. After everything, all the years of sacrifice, erasure, silence, now I held something solid, something legal, something with my name behind it. I whispered aloud, "Let's see how Chad likes paying rent to a mouth he couldn't feed." A month later, the notification letters went out. All tenants would be reassessed for rent, lease terms reviewed, new management protocols introduced. And for Chad and Amanda, their rent would triple. Not double, triple. Plus overdue maintenance fees they hadn't even realized were accumulating. I didn't have to be there to see his face. I could feel the fury radiating from that unit like smoke from a fire. And it wasn't about money. It was about pride. Chad was a man who needed to feel superior, who needed to control every inch of the world around him. And now he was paying me just to keep a roof over his head. 2 days after the letters went out, Amanda called. It was the first time I'd heard her voice since that night. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, I don't know if you heard, but something weird's going on. Our rent just shot up like a lot. Chad's losing it. I don't know. Can we talk?" I didn't respond, because this wasn't about vengeance. This was about gravity. They needed to feel the weight of their choices. I drove by the building one night, just once. Their lights were on. I could see shadows pacing inside. Amanda's silhouette moving quickly. Chad's voice, loud, angry, echoing off the walls. I watched them from my car. I didn't feel joy, not exactly. There was something else. A strange hollow ache that sat in my chest like unfinished business. Because the truth is, I would have given anything to be invited back in. Not to the apartment, to Amanda's heart. But I knew that wasn't possible. At least not yet. 3 weeks passed. One afternoon, I was grocery shopping on the other side of town. I was in the cereal aisle comparing labels when I saw her. Amanda. She didn't see me. I was tucked behind a discount rack. She looked tired. Not just physically worn. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun. Her eyes were swollen like she'd been crying. Her cart was half empty, just basics. Rice, eggs, a few off-brand cans, the cheapest pasta. Then she picked up a box of mac and cheese, stared at it for a moment, and put it back. That moment broke me. Not because I pitied her, but because I remembered the little girl who used to beg me to check for monsters under the bed. And now she was living with one. I drove home in silence, sat on the couch for hours holding my phone. Her last text blinked at me on the screen. "I really need you." Part of me wanted to call. The part that still heard her baby giggle in my memories. The part that still saved birthday cards from 2nd grade. The part that remembered the feel of her hand in mine as we crossed the street. But the woman I'd become. She stayed silent. Because silence when wielded right can be louder than 1,000 words. The repairs began quietly. Leaks, broken locks, flickering hallway lights. Chad didn't notice. He was too busy stewing over rent, firing off emails filled with outrage and legal threats to the property manager. But I knew him. I knew how his ego worked. He wasn't going to move. That would be defeat. And Amanda, she always followed his lead. So I kept working. Updated the mailboxes, installed new security cameras in the lobby, rebranded the signage. ML Holdings. Still no names, still no face. Just the invisible hand of a woman they discarded. Then came the notice. Mandatory inspections. Chad responded immediately, furious. His message through the tenant portal was laced with threats and indignation. I read it with a smile. "You are not legally permitted to enter without 72-hour notice. Any intrusion will be met with legal consequences. This is harassment." He was unraveling. And I didn't need to lift a finger. Meanwhile, I was changing too. My hair was shorter now, sharper. I wore clean, deliberate clothes, polished but not loud. I walked like someone who had somewhere to be. I started joining real estate meetups under a different name. Watched, learned, took notes, listened. No one asked about my past. They just saw a quiet, composed woman with sharp eyes and cash on hand. And that was my armor. The best disguise is the truth you don't say. Then one day after a meeting with the property contractor, I walked out of the building and past them. Chad and Amanda. They didn't recognize me. Chad didn't look at me twice. Amanda barely glanced. I kept my sunglasses on, hair tucked into a bun, documents in hand, and I walked past my own daughter, invisible, not because I was weak, But because I was stronger than they remembered, the voicemails kept coming. Soft, hesitant. "Hi, Mom. Just wanted to see if maybe you had time to talk. I know things have been complicated." I didn't return them, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Because sometimes silence is the only way someone can hear themselves. It's funny. We spend so much of our lives thinking that love means fixing, being the glue, holding everything and everyone together even when we're falling apart. But I was done being glue, done patching over the cracks other people made. What Amanda and Chad were living through now, that wasn't punishment. It was consequence. And it had been waiting for years. Another week passed. Then 2. Amanda stopped leaving voicemails. She started texting instead. Short, careful. "Hey, can we talk? I really need you." Then silence. Again. Like her reaching out had cost her more than she was ready to admit. I didn't reply, but I read every word. And every time I felt that old ache, the mother in me wanting to reach across the void, I opened my mother's diary. Read her words again. Margaret will never know. She must never know. Except now I did. And that knowledge, it was armor. No one could tear through it, not anymore. I wasn't the woman begging to stay under their roof. I was the woman who owned it. And I had plans. The building now under ML Holdings was running smoothly. Most tenants were respectful, grateful even, quietly paying rent, appreciating the repairs, the upgrades. Only one unit made noise, Chad's. Every week another angry note slipped under the office door. "Water pressures trash. Trash is piling up. If this is what we're paying for, it's a joke." None of it went unanswered. It just wasn't answered by me because I didn't need to speak. The building spoke for itself. Then the quarterly report landed in my inbox. Along with it, photos of their unit. Mildew in the bathroom, cracked tiles, overflowing mail slot, broken blinds, grease-stained stove. It was more than just wear and tear. It was a life unraveling. One tile, one unpaid utility, one silent dinner at a time. Word around the complex was that Chad had picked up more shifts. Amanda was seen crying near the back steps. Neighbors noticed shouting behind their walls. And I sat in a new apartment in a different building a few miles away. My unit had a view of their courtyard. Not all the time, but often enough. I wasn't watching out of malice. I just needed reminders. Reminders that I hadn't imagined the betrayal, that what they did to me wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a choice. And choices have echoes. Still, some nights I'd find myself holding my phone, staring at Amanda's last text. "I really need you." The mother in me still ached. But the woman I had become, she waited. Because this was only the beginning. I used to think heartbreak came in loud moments. Slammed doors, shouting matches, public tears. But the real heartbreak, it's quiet. It's the sound of a voicemail you don't return. The message left unread. The silence between you and someone who once called you Mommy. Then the report started to shift. The maintenance team told me Chad had become unhinged, storming down to the office twice a week, demanding names, asking who owned the building, demanding a face. But all he got was the same calm response. All communication goes through ML Holdings. He was spiraling. And I didn't have to say a word. Amanda. She was shrinking. Neighbors said she looked thinner, quieter, always glancing over her shoulder. Then came the call from building security. A neighbor had reported shouting, glass breaking, something about losing control. The maintenance team checked. No one answered the door. But through the walls, they heard pacing, crying. Then silence. Heavy, cold, like a house holding its breath. 3 days later, I got a letter. No return address. Inside, just a note. "I know what you're doing. You think you're clever, but you don't scare me. I'll find out who you are. And when I do, you'll regret it." No name, no signature. But I knew the handwriting. Chad wrote like he talked. Angry, uneven, always pressing too hard. I held the letter for a long time. Not because I was afraid. Because I remembered. The night he stood in the kitchen and called me a burden. The way Amanda said nothing. The weight of silence as they watched me leave. And now, he was the one choking on uncertainty. Screaming into the void, I doubled security. Installed discreet surveillance. Not just for my sake, for every tenant's. because one man's rage wasn't going to become another woman's danger. Amanda didn't call again, but the reports trickled in. She'd sold her car, started walking to work. Their lights went out earlier and earlier each night. They were slipping. And I stayed silent, because this wasn't revenge. It was resolution. Letting the walls close in. Letting the cage reveal itself for what it had always been. And then one night, the intercom buzzed. "Hi, this is Amanda Harmon. I was wondering if my mom lives here." My heart stopped. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the screen frozen. Then slowly, I pressed the door release. 10 minutes later, she knocked. Soft, hesitant. When I opened the door, she stood there, soaked from the rain, holding a grocery bag like a shield. Her eyes were red, her lips trembling, but she said nothing. I stepped aside. She walked in, dripping on my floors, silent, small, and for the first time in years, I saw my daughter. Not the woman married to Chad, not the stranger who watched me be erased, but Amanda, my girl, lost, ashamed, and reaching for something she didn't know how to name. Amanda sat on the edge of my couch like someone who didn't know if they were allowed to be there. She clutched that grocery bag like it was a passport back into my life, like maybe, just maybe, it could prove she was still worthy of being let in. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask questions. I just walked to the kitchen, turned the kettle on, and pulled out 2 mugs. Chamomile, her favorite as a child. When I brought the mugs to the coffee table, she took hers in both hands like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. For a long time, we sat in silence. Only the soft hum of the city through the window, the rain tapping gently against the glass, and the sound of our breathing filled the room. Then she spoke, barely above a whisper. "He's not who I thought he was." I didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't confirm what I already knew. She continued. Part of me always knew, but I told myself it was stress, that he just needed support, that if I was patient, if I stayed quiet, he'd come around. Still, I said nothing. He's been spiraling, accusing me of things, going through my phone, following me to work, asking if I was hiding something. A shiver ran through her, not from the cold, but from the fear that had finally caught up to her. She looked up. "He asked if I was helping you, if I knew who was behind the rent, behind everything." My hands tightened around my cup. She took a breath. "I told him no, that I hadn't spoken to you in weeks, that I didn't know anything." Pause. Then softly, "But that was a lie." Her eyes met mine. For the first time in years, they didn't look defensive, or evasive, or tired from pretending. They looked honest. "I found your name on a security notice, same management company. I connected the dots. It wasn't hard. You always were more resourceful than people gave you credit for." There was almost a smile in her voice. Almost. But it faded just as fast. "I don't even know how to be around you anymore." She was unraveling right there on my couch. The Amanda I raised was still in there, buried under fear, guilt, and years of siding with someone who never deserved her loyalty. And now she was trying to claw her way back. "You left," she said, voice cracking, "and I let you. I let him push you out." I finally spoke. Quiet, steady. "No, Amanda, you didn't let him. You stood with him." She froze. Her mouth opened like she wanted to protest, to defend, to explain. But she didn't, because there was nothing left to explain. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out into the dark. "I begged for your voice that night," I said. "Just one word, one sign that you remembered I was your mother, that I mattered, and you stayed silent." Behind me, she exhaled a soft, broken sound. "I didn't think it would get this bad," she whispered. "I thought I could manage him." I shook my head. "You don't manage a man like that. You survive him, or you leave him." We sat like that, me standing her seated for what felt like hours. 2 women, 1 blood, but not yet trust. Maybe not ever. When she finally stood, she set the untouched mug down carefully. Her eyes were rimmed red, but her voice was steadier now. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I just needed to remember what it felt like to be safe." I walked her to the door. She paused on the threshold, turned, and without warning wrapped her arms around me. I didn't return the hug at first. Then I did, cautiously, like someone holding a fragile memory. When she pulled back, she didn't say goodbye. She just looked at me one last time and left. The door clicked shut behind her. I sank into my chair, holding the warmth of her untouched tea like it was a lifeline. She had come. She had looked me in the eye. And now I knew the cracks were finally starting to show. Because the thing about real power, it doesn't raise its voice, it doesn't bang on tables, it doesn't scream for attention. It whispers. It moves quietly, carefully, deliberately, like a chess master who only ever needed one opening. And Chad was squirming. After Amanda's visit, things inside their apartment grew darker. I didn't need a camera to know it. You can feel a house unraveling. The maintenance team said Chad was back to storming the office. More aggressive now, pacing, ranting, demanding names. I want a face. Someone is targeting me. Tell me who owns this damn place. But all he got in return was the calm, professional answer. All communication goes through ML Holdings. And that killed him. Not knowing, not being able to control the narrative, not having a villain he could touch. So he started digging. He started with the LLC. Standard search. Hit a dead end. Then came the emails pretending to be a tenant asking for info. Sloppy. Transparent. Then he tried calling the county office. Posing as a lawyer. But the clerk flagged it and reported it straight to my team. And when all that failed, he turned inward. The neighbor downstairs called the management office. Said they heard shouting again. Loud, violent, glass breaking. Then silence. No footsteps, no TV, nothing. The next morning, Amanda walked to work alone. Hair unwashed, face pale, a ghost of the girl she once was. And Chad, no one saw him for 2 days. That afternoon, I got another letter. No return address. But this time it wasn't angry. It was desperate. You think you've won. But I know what this is. You've been manipulating this the whole time. And if you don't stop, I swear to God I will go public. I'll tell them everything. About you, about Sterling, about your mother, about the money. Let's see how your precious reputation holds up then. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into a folder, and emailed it straight to my attorney. By the next morning, Chad received a cease and desist. Inside, every threatening message he had sent to the office, the falsified documents, the impersonations, the tenant complaints, and yes, even audio clips of his public rants legally recorded from shared spaces. We didn't press criminal charges. We didn't need to. Just one defamation and harassment lawsuit was enough. And he cracked. Because men like Chad, they're loud until they realize they're cornered. 2 days later, Amanda called. He's gone, she said. Her voice shook. Packed a bag while I was at work. Left a note saying he was being hunted, that you ruined his life. I sat there in silence, then softly said, he ruined his own. Amanda didn't argue. She just whispered, I'm sorry for thinking he deserved my silence. You were scared, I told her. I've been there. Fear makes you small, but you don't have to stay that way. After Chad left, there was no grand announcement, no dramatic door slam, no final insult screamed from the porch. He simply vanished. Just like he came into my life quietly attached to my daughter and slowly systematically dismantling her confidence. Amanda told me he left a note. Nothing of substance. Just paranoia scratched out in jagged handwriting. She's coming after me. This was never about rent. You'll see one day. I didn't need to see the paper. I could already hear the voice in my head. That voice that once called me a freeloader. That looked at me across a dinner table with disdain. That reduced my life, my love, my motherhood to a mouth he didn't want to feed. And now he was gone. Amanda stood alone. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt something deeper, a quiet, cautious pride. She called more often after that. Not every day, not to cry, just to talk. Little things, groceries, work. A bird she saw outside her window that reminded her of childhood walks. No more pretending, no more filtered updates, just truth. And I gave her space to say it. One afternoon, I opened the door and found her standing there. This time, she wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She was holding something. I froze, because I recognized it before she even spoke. The diary, my mother's diary. I found it, she said, in the back of my closet. I think you left it the last time you visited me, years ago. She placed it on my coffee table like it was sacred. And for me it was, I read it, she admitted quickly. Not all of it. I wasn't trying to snoop, but I knew her handwriting, and once I started, I couldn't stop. She sat down slowly. I didn't know about Harold Sterling, or the trust, or any of it. I nodded. Neither did I, not until everything else was already gone. She looked at me, eyes wide and wet. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe you were helpless? That one landed. Because the truth, I had been helpless. For a while. I didn't have a plan, I said. That night when you closed the door on me, I had no place to cry where someone wouldn't knock and tell me to keep it down. Amanda winced. I found the diary at my lowest point, counting quarters to eat dinner, wondering if I mattered to anyone. That diary didn't just tell me who I was, it reminded me that I mattered, that someone, even in silence, had loved me enough to leave something behind. She leaned forward, hands clenched. I don't know how I became that kind of daughter, the kind who could... She swallowed. Who could watch you walk out with 2 suitcases and do nothing. I stood and walked to the window. The trees swayed gently under the weight of early spring. You didn't become her all at once, I said. It was small choices, letting things slide, choosing peace over truth, believing love meant loyalty, even when it hurt. She stood trembling slightly. I've left him. The words hit the room like a bolt of lightning. He tried to go through my bag again, my laptop. I told him no. He screamed, said he was coming back. So the next morning, I changed the locks. I turned to her, eyes wide. I don't know who I am without him, she said, but I'd rather find out than keep disappearing. Silence passed between us, not the kind that hurts, the kind that holds space for transformation. She looked at the diary again. You didn't deserve what I did, what we did. I can't fix that, but I want to try. I walked over, sat beside her. I used to dream of hearing those words, I said softly. But now that you've said them, they don't fix the past. She looked confused. I gently took her hand. They rewrite it. We sat in that silence a while, letting the truth settle, letting our hearts stitch themselves back together, not with force, but with permission. Before she left that night, she paused at the door. You didn't raise me to be weak, she said. No, I replied. You just stopped looking. Now, she was seeing everything, not just who I had become, but who I had always been. A week later, Chad tried one last trick, an email, subject line in all caps. We need to talk now. I almost didn't open it, but I did, because I needed to know how small he had become, and he didn't disappoint. I know everything. About the building, the trust, the inheritance, Sterling. You think you're clever? Think you can ruin my life and walk away smiling? Let me make something clear. If you don't undo this, I'll go to the press. I'll expose the affair, your mother's shame, your secret money. Let's see how your name holds up then. I sat there for a full minute. Then I forwarded the email to my attorney. By the next morning, Chad received a second cease and desist. This one was sharper. Inside. Every false statement he'd made. Every digital threat traced back to his IP. Every tenant complaint. And the audio clips, those were new. Still, we didn't sue. We didn't need to. The threat of a defamation case was enough. He backed down. Because men like Chad, they're brave until they realize you kept receipts. Amanda called 2 days later. He's gone, she said again. This time for real. No note, just gone. She paused. He left his key on the counter. I didn't gloat. I didn't cheer. I just closed my eyes and whispered, good. Freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes in small, quiet moments. Moments that feel like a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding for years. For me, it came in the form of a manila envelope. Inside an offer from a young couple interested in buying the apartment building. Not for profit, for purpose. They wanted to renovate it unit by unit. Offer affordable housing for single mothers and women leaving difficult relationships. They called it the Safe Haven Project. I read their proposal twice, then a third time. And I cried. Not because I needed the money, but because the building, the place where I was erased, where I was discarded, was about to become a sanctuary. For someone like me, someone like Amanda, someone who thought no one would believe her pain. I called Mr. Goldstein. Let's make it happen. He didn't question it. He never did. 3 weeks later, we signed the papers. The couple, James and Lila, were exactly the kind of people my younger self would have trusted. Kind eyes, firm handshakes. No need to prove themselves through arrogance or noise. Just people with vision, people who cared. As I handed them the final keys, I smiled and said, "Take care of the walls. They've heard more than they'll ever tell." Lila nodded, eyes misty. "We will, and thank you for believing in this." And just like that, I let go. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of peace. I walked away from the building, not as a woman who lost everything, but as a woman who learned what was never really hers to begin with. That building, that silence, that shame. It belonged to a version of me I no longer carried. Amanda met me for lunch 2 days later. No Chad. No makeup to hide behind. Just jeans, a sweater, and the quiet confidence of someone rebuilding brick by brick. "I heard about the sale," she said. I nodded. "You okay with it?" She stirred her tea slowly, then looked up. "I'm more than okay. I'm proud of you." Pause. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, I'm proud of me too. She told me she was applying to finish her degree. Online classes. Women's studies. "I want to help people like us," she said. "People who feel like no one will listen until it's too late." I reached across the table, took her hand. "Then listen to them now," I said. "That's how we start rewriting everything." That afternoon, we walked along the river, not talking much, just sharing space, side by side. 2 women, no longer fractured, no longer afraid to take up space. Amanda moved into a small apartment on the east side. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. Every shelf, every coffee cup, every window that let the sun in without asking who deserved the light. It was the kind of home you build when you finally stop asking for permission. She started sending me photos of the books she was reading, of meals she cooked, of plants she didn't kill, and once of a sticky note on her fridge. "You are not a burden." Below it, in tiny handwriting, "You are the backbone." I saved that photo because somewhere deep inside me, I needed it too. And me, I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't go back to being small. I started something new. ML Holdings rebranded, not as a silent shell company, but as a foundation for women starting over, for mothers walking away, for the forgotten, the dismissed, the quietly strong. We bought one more property, not for profit, for purpose, and we called it Louise House, after the woman who gave me life, after the woman who left her love in ink because she wasn't allowed to say it out loud. I framed the first page of her diary, hung it by the front entrance of Louise House, not because I needed her to be seen, but because I wanted every woman who walked through that door to know, you are not invisible. You are not someone's shame. You are loved even when the world refuses to say it. Amanda visits often now. We plant flowers together out front. We laugh more than we cry. And when we do cry, it's the kind that waters the roots, not drowns them. People ask me sometimes if I regret staying quiet for so long, if I wish I had shouted louder, left sooner, fought harder. And the truth, maybe. But I also know this. Silence is not the absence of power. Sometimes it is power itself. The kind that waits, the kind that watches, the kind that endures until the time is right. And when it finally speaks, the world listens. Because now they know what I know. You can't erase a woman who's already written herself back in. The first time I walked through Louise's house after renovations, it didn't feel like a building. It felt like a heartbeat. Soft, steady, constant. Walls painted in warm tones. A reading corner tucked into every hallway. Photos of mothers and daughters who chose survival not as victims, but as architects of their own rescue. The women came slowly at first. One arrived with just a backpack and a child's drawing folded into her pocket. Another wore sunglasses indoors and flinched every time a door closed. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to, because the house did. It spoke in kindness, in safe locks, in soft lighting and tea kettles that never judged. It whispered, "You're home now, and this time no one gets to silence you." Amanda volunteered on Saturdays. She brought muffins, books, and a presence that didn't try to fix anyone, just witness them. One afternoon, she led a journaling group. Simple prompt. Write one thing you were told that wasn't true. The room stayed quiet for a long time. Then slowly the words came. I was told I was the problem. I was told no one would believe me. I was told mothers don't leave. Amanda wrote too. When she left, I peeked at her page. Just one line. I was told that silence was love. And underneath it, she'd written, "But silence without truth is only fear wearing perfume." The women weren't statistics. They weren't cases. They were rebirths. Each one carrying the quiet rebellion of survival. One day, a young woman, Raina, knocked on my office door. Eyes fierce, hands clenched. "I heard you used to be like us." I raised an eyebrow. "Define like us." She shrugged, hurt, unseen, then dangerous. I smiled. "Sounds accurate." She sat across from me. "I want to do what you did, not just survive, but build something, take something back, flip the story." I leaned forward. "Then start with your name." She frowned. "What do you mean?" So many of us let our names be bent by other people's tongues. We hear them insulted, abandoned, mocked. But your name, that's your cornerstone. Speak it like it matters, and build from there. She didn't reply, but she came back the next day, and the day after. Raina became the first intern at the Louise Foundation. A year later, she opened her own shelter on the West Side. She called it Cornerstone. I cried the day she cut the ribbon, not because she was strong now, but because she always had been. She just needed someone to say, "I see you, I believe you, and you're not crazy." I started teaching workshops, not the kind with slide decks and cold coffee, the kind where women sit in a circle, knees brushing hearts wide open. We talked about shame, inheritance, the invisible bruises left by words like ungrateful, too much, difficult. One woman, Lucille, asked me once, "How did you stay so composed through it all? Didn't you want to scream?" I laughed. "Oh, honey, I did scream, just not the way they expected." She leaned in. I told her. My silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. And when I finally spoke, I made sure it was in a language they couldn't ignore ownership. There's something sacred about spaces built by women who've been hurt. We don't build walls to keep people out. We build rooms for breathing, grieving, remembering. Rooms where rage is allowed but not in charge. Rooms where forgiveness isn't forced but offered if and when we're ready. Sometimes I walk the halls of Louise's house late at night. Lights low, floorboards creaking just enough to feel alive. I stop outside each room and listen. A baby crying. A kettle whistling. 2 women laughing about a bad haircut. These are the sounds of healing. They don't make headlines. They don't trend on social media. But they change the world. One mother, one daughter, one whispered, "I'm still here" at a time. Amanda once asked me, "Do you ever miss the life before all this? Before Chad? Before the building? Before the storm?" I thought about it. About the girl I used to be. The wife, the mother, the one who thought quiet suffering was the price of love. And I told her, I don't miss her. I mourn her. There's a difference. She nodded, because she was mourning her old self too. And that mourning, it wasn't weakness. It was the funeral before the resurrection. We held a garden ceremony last spring, planted a row of rose bushes in honor of the women who came through the house and left stronger. Each bush bore a name. Lucille, Raina, Denise, Fatima, June, and Amanda's name too. At the center, one plaque. It didn't say victim, or survivor, or even mother. It just said, she remembered who she was, and everything changed. That's what Louise's house is. A memory turned into a movement. A wound turned into a wall of support. My silence turned into their megaphone. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, not even the years I lost. Because those years, they taught me the most important truth I've ever learned. You don't have to burn bridges if you learn to build better ones. It happened on a Sunday morning. The kind where the light comes in soft and slow like it's tiptoeing across the floor. Amanda knocked on my door, not like someone visiting, but like someone coming home. She wasn't holding muffins or books this time. She was holding a folder. Plain, manila, worn at the edges like it had been opened and closed a dozen times. "I want to show you something," she said. I set down my tea. She sat beside me, crossed one leg over the other, and opened the folder like it was sacred. Inside, a business proposal. Typed, highlighted, carefully annotated. At the top, the Inheritance Project stories from the women we became. I blinked. She smiled. It's a writing and storytelling program for daughters, for mothers, for women who've lived through silence and want to speak finally. I ran my fingers over the paper. She kept going. We'll partner with shelters, halfway houses, counseling centers. We'll teach women how to tell their stories, not just as therapy, but as testimony. Why, I asked, even though I already knew. Amanda looked me dead in the eye. Because your story changed mine. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But there was something about her face so steady, so sure, that made me sit taller instead. She wasn't coming to me for permission. She was coming for partnership. Over the next few weeks, we worked together on the details. I brought structure. She brought fire. And for the first time, we weren't mother and daughter, trying to fix what was broken. We were women building something new, side by side. The program launched 6 months later. The first session had 8 women, each with a notebook, each with a past they hadn't said out loud yet. Amanda opened the circle with a prompt. Write down the name of the woman you were before someone tried to break you. Silence. Then the sound of pens moving. Slow, uncertain, but moving. Amanda didn't rush them. She never did. She just gave them the space. Afterward, one woman, Maritza, walked up to her. I didn't know I was still in there, she said, voice shaking. Amanda hugged her. You are, and now you've named her. That's where the healing starts. I watched from the back of the room. Didn't speak, didn't intrude. Just witnessed. Amanda had become the woman I once prayed for in the quietest corners of the night. Not perfect, but present. Not loud, but powerful. And more than anything awake. We held a special session the next month. Mother-daughter pairs. Some estranged, some newly reunited, some still navigating the rubble of what once was. Amanda and I led together. We shared our story. Not the clean version, the real one. The motel, the silence, the betrayal, the rediscovery. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, but no one cried from pity. They cried from recognition, from that deep ache that says, I've lived that too. That night, Amanda pulled me aside. You know what I realized today? What? Forgiveness isn't a gift we give others. It's a home we build for ourselves. And when we're ready, we open the door. I stared at her stunned. She smiled. You built yours, Mom. And now, I've built mine. The Inheritance Project grew faster than either of us expected. Grants came in. So did letters. From women in Alaska, in Georgia, in tiny towns we'd never heard of. All of them writing the same thing. Thank you for reminding me I still have a voice. We published the first anthology on the anniversary of Louise House's opening. 50 essays, 50 women, 50 ways to say, I survived, and I'm still writing. Amanda didn't just write one essay. She wrote 5, each a different version of herself. The daughter, the wife, the broken woman, the witness, the warrior. My favorite, the one titled, She Was Right to Walk Away. Sometimes late at night, I'll open the book and reread that one. Not because I need reassurance, but because I'm proud, not just of her, but of me. For leaving, for staying gone, for letting her come back on her own terms. One afternoon, she handed me another folder. What's this? A legal draft. I want to co-direct the foundation, officially. You sure? Yes, but only if you're ready to share your legacy. I smiled. It was never mine alone. It was always meant to be inherited. We signed the papers the next day. Louise House, the Inheritance Project, Cornerstone. All under one name now, the Quiet Rising Foundation. Because sometimes the strongest voices start in whispers, and the most powerful legacies, they begin in silence and end in revolution. I used to believe legacy was about money, about the name on a building, the number in a will, the stories told at your funeral. But now I know better. Legacy is the echo of the choices we make when no one's watching. It's the daughter who finds her voice, the mother who walks away, the stranger who reads your story and says, that's me, that's what I needed to hear. At Louise House, we planted a garden out back. Not because we're good at gardening, we're not, but because the act of planting something, watching it grow, is sacred. Amanda chose the first seed, lavender. It's healing, she said, and it reminds me of Grandma's backyard. I chose rosemary. For remembrance, I told her. For all the women who were never allowed to tell their story. We added a bench near the roses. It's not fancy, just wood and iron painted soft gray. But carved into the backrest are the words. This is where the silence ended. Every now and then I sit there with a cup of tea. I watch the women come and go, some with strollers, some with books, some with bruises fading into new skin. Each one a testament to what happens when you stop begging to be seen and start seeing yourself. A woman named Dahlia once sat beside me. She was in her early 30s, eyes dark with too many storms. She stared ahead for a while, then quietly asked, "How do you know when you're healed?" I thought about it, took a sip of tea. "You don't," I said. "You just notice that one day the wound stops being your identity. It becomes part of the story, not the headline." She nodded, wrote something in her journal, then smiled. Amanda and I gave a talk at a university last fall. It wasn't planned. A professor read her essay and invited us to speak. We stood on that stage, two women who had once gone months without speaking, and told our story to a room of strangers. When it was over, a student approached us, young, shy, clutching a printed copy of The Inheritance Project. "I haven't spoken to my mother in 5 years," she said. Amanda didn't say a word. She just handed her a pen. "Write her a letter, even if you never send it. It's not about her, it's about you." The girl's eyes filled. "I thought I was the only one." "You're never the only one," I told her. "You were just the first in your circle to say it out loud." The truth is, this story, my story, isn't extraordinary. It's painfully common. That's what makes it powerful. Because when we tell these stories out loud, when we stop protecting the people who hurt us and start protecting ourselves, we give other women permission to leave, to rise, to heal. I used to carry shame like a second skin. Now I wear it like old lace, beautiful, fragile, and no longer binding. I don't flinch when I hear his name. I don't replay that Christmas dinner. I don't wonder if I was wrong for walking away, because walking away was never weakness. It was ancestral courage. It was every woman in my bloodline who stayed too long, finally whispering, "Enough!" Amanda asked me once if I was happy. I smiled. "I'm whole." Happiness is too small a word for that. We held a gala last spring, Louise House's 3rd anniversary. Women flew in from 5 states. Former residents, new volunteers, students, writers, daughters who brought their mothers, mothers who brought their daughters. We opened the evening with poetry. Amanda read one titled Inheritance. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was true. And when she finished, she looked out at the room and said, "We are not broken. We are rewritten, stronger, louder, kinder, and we are not going back to smallness." The room erupted, not with applause, but with exhale. That deep collective release of women who realized they were never alone. At the end of the night, Amanda and I stood in front of the garden. The lavender had bloomed, the rosemary too, even the stubborn marigolds were thriving. She reached for my hand. "Do you think she'd be proud of us?" I knew who she meant. "Louise." She nodded. I looked up at the stars. The same ones I used to wish on. The same ones that lit the motel window on my first night alone. And I said, "I think she's been here all along, waiting, watching, and finally smiling. If you're still listening, friend, this is what I need you to remember. You are not too late. You are not too much. You are not broken beyond repair. You are a story that deserves to be told. And if the people around you won't listen, write it anyway, because somewhere out there is another woman curled up in silence who needs your voice to find hers." Thank you for hearing mine. Thank you for letting Margaret exist, not just in pain, but in power. And if no one's told you today, you are enough. Exactly as you are. And it's not too late to come home to yourself.